Morning, everyone. This week, House Republicans are again taking action on jobs to help middle-class families and small businesses. First, yesterday an agreement was reached on legislation to streamline and strengthen our job training system to make it more effective for those who need a job. And for Americans who are having a hard time finding the skills they need for the jobs they want, these reforms will help close that gap. It's the same approach Republicans championed in the Skills Act, and I want to thank Chairman Klein and Representative Fox for their hard work on this issue. Secondly, this week the House passed, on an overwhelmingly bipartisan basis, a water resources bill that will help economic growth in our country. This bill reforms the way our country develops and maintains vital ports and waterways, and in so doing will help strengthen our economy and keep America competitive. Notably, this bill is earmark-free. I hope the Senate will act on both of these measures. You know, under both Republican and Democrat majorities of the past, the use and the number of earmarks skyrocketed. When the American people entrusted Republicans with the majority here in the House, we pledged that we would do things differently. So when it comes to earmarks, we've kept our promise. For the fifth year in a row, we're doing appropriation measures without earmarks. Defense authorization bill, no earmarks. Highway bill, no earmarks. And now the water resources bill, no earmarks. Well, now we've got the two top Democrats in the Senate who are plotting to try and reinstate pork barrel earmarks into bills. Well, let me just say this. My position hasn't changed, and the position of our team has not changed. This is more than just about dollars and cents. It's about earning the trust of the people that we serve. And as long as I'm Speaker, there will be no earmarks. Lastly, we all share the American people's outrage about the horrors at the VA. Outrage the President belatedly echoed yesterday. You know, the White House keeps talking about its efforts to increase VA funding, but where's the accountability? Yesterday, the House took action by passing the VA Management Accountability Act. Instead of waffling, the President should support this bill and call on Senate Democrats to pass it immediately. The President has made a lot of promises to our veterans. It's time for him to start keeping them.
Mr. Speaker, on the VA then, there's an Inspector General investigation. Chairman Miller is trying to compel some of these witnesses from the VA to testify next week. Should they be moving forward in this at the same time the IG investigation is going on? And do you have confidence in the IG inquiry?
I think the effort by Mr. Miller, the chairman of the VA committee, along with his Democrat counterpart, is to try to compel the department to turn over the documents that have been subpoenaed. And the fact is they've not complied with the subpoena. I think there's an effort underway to have a hearing with those top managers at the VA next week.
And then the second point, though, what about this IP process? I know you like to be respectful of the processes of government here, but are you confident that that will help get to the bottom of this? Or
I am not confident that the IG has shown the interest or capacity to get to the bottom of what is a systemic failure of an entire agency. You know, if you were a doctor and you were seeing a patient, you'd want to know to the extent of how sick that patient is before you would begin to prescribe some method of curing that. And I think it's very important in this situation that we get to the bottom of just what is wrong. It's more than just waiting list. And I think it's important for us to understand the failure that's gone on here.
Mr. Speaker, you've been reluctant. You haven't called for Secretary Shinseki to step down. Do you still think that he should be at the helm?
Listen, I've not called for General Shinseki to resign, although I have to admit I'm getting a little closer. But here's the point. This isn't about one person. This isn't about the secretary. It's about the entire system underneath him. And, you know, the general can leave and we can wait around for months to go through a nomination process. and we get a new person, but the disaster continues. And so I don't want people to get confused about what the shiny ball is here. The shiny ball is a systemic failure of this agency.
So if that's the case, why are you getting closer?
The reports that continue to come are appalling. And these are men and women who served our country, and we not just let them down, we've let them die. This is awful stuff, and somebody ought to be held accountable for it.
Mr. Speaker, along those lines, have you heard a lot from your constituents in the past about problems within the Veterans Hospital system, Veterans Care system?
We have, but I can tell you we've heard a lot more over the last couple of weeks. Some of this being prompted by a big newspaper in my district, Dayton Daily News, who've done a number of articles about problems at the Dayton VA Center, and prompted a lot more phone calls and a lot more horror stories from our veterans.
Mr. Speaker, we came here to ask you why are you blocking immigration reform? It's been almost a year since the Senate
Me?
passed. Yes, you
Blocking?
personally. Yeah, you could bring it to a vote and you haven't. It's been almost a year since the Senate
Well, the
passed
issue of immigration reform is an issue that I've talked about for 18 months, starting the day after the 2012 election, and the fact that Congress needs to deal with this. I've made it clear we're not going to deal with the Senate bill, a 1,300-page bill that no one has read. And we're not going to do it. I think that moving in a piece-by-piece fashion on this in a common-sense way is the way to do this. But the president has responsibility here as well. And when he continues to ignore Obamacare, his own law, 38 unilateral delays, he reduces the confidence of the American people in his willingness to implement an immigration law the way we would pass it. So the president has to rebuild this trust if we're going to be able to do this.
Obamacare has to do with the immigration reform. The Senate passed it almost a year ago, and you haven't moved on that.
I just
Many
gave you.
people are questioning and your vision on this.
I just gave you an answer. There's nobody more interested in fixing this problem than I am.
But
the
you
president.
haven't done it.
Well, listen.
You can do it,
President-
Mr. Speaker. You can do it, and you really haven't done it.
I appreciate your opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, a year ago, the House came within just a small handful of votes of defunding the NSA and all their bulk data collection. It was a real close vote. Today, 303 members, including the vast majority of your Republicans, passed this bill. What's changed over the last year, do you think?
Well, I think when you look at this NSA reform bill, people are a lot more comfortable that the government is not storing all of this metadata that we were. And I think we also, in this bill, make it clear that there's no access to this data without a court decision, and the standards for that decision are higher than what they were.
Speaker Boehner, turning to politics, how elated were you that the establishment beat back the Tea Party on Tuesday?
There's been a lot of good candidates running all across the country of all different stripes. I thought the election went well. We're going to have good candidates on the ballot. But I'm not going to enter into this distinction between the Tea Party and Republicans because it's a distinction you're going to have a hard time finding.
Back on the metadata bill, how would you describe the cooperation that you had, that the Republicans had with the administration, and are things at least getting better on national security issues between House Republicans and the administration?
Listen, we work with the administration on a whole host of issues. And I think on this issue, the administration, their position and position of House Republicans, frankly, was pretty close. But as I said on the floor, I appreciate the work of Chairman Rogers and Chairman Goodlatte, but I also appreciate the work of Congressman Conyers and Nadler and others who came together to find a way to help maintain these programs in a way that will continue to make America safe.
Leader Pelosi's
Let your
decided,
hair grow, will you?
It's growing back. So now that Leader Pelosi's decided to appoint Democrats to the Benghazi Select Committee, how do you envision this process moving forward, and how soon do you think it will get started? When do you hope that they'll be able to report back to you with something?
I wouldn't be expecting you're going to see a lot very soon. Both Democrats and Republicans have to hire staff. The committees are required to turn over their committee records to the Select Committee. They're going to have to have time to go through all of those documents. They're going to have to decide what do we know, what don't we know, and then figure out how to go get it. And so it's going to be a while, I think, before we see a whole lot here.
Speaker, I just have a follow-up on immigration reform. In about a half hour, Senators Durbin, Reid, and Schumer are going to call on you directly to schedule a vote. So let's assume you don't want the Senate bill. I mean, you're on the record for not wanting the Senate bill. Well, what about a step-by-step approach? I mean, nothing's been moving in that direction either. So what are you going to respond to them?
Well, there are a lot of conversations going on amongst members on both sides of the aisle. But the president has a responsibility here to show us that we can trust him to enforce an immigration law the way it's passed. The president's going to have to take some actions. The president's going to have to demonstrate that we can trust him. Simple as that.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday a Republican governor of Pennsylvania decided to not appeal a decision that brought marriage equality to that state. But because of that decision, if same-sex couples marry in that state, it's still perfectly legal for them to be fired or discriminated against on their job. If a Republican governor is going to bring marriage equality to Pennsylvania, shouldn't the Republican-controlled House schedule a vote on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act?
No, I think we'll leave that decision to the governor of Pennsylvania.
Speaker Boehner, you said you don't have confidence in the Inspector General's report of the VA. If you don't think they're addressing the situation, what specific steps do you want the administration to take to address the waiting periods?
I think I'll reserve judgment on exactly what those specific steps are. All that I do know is that the House of Representatives has a responsibility to get to the bottom of these issues, and we will be working forthrightly to do that.
Mr. Speaker, on the NSA, this bill is fairly narrowly targeted, and you've had some pushback from some tech companies who say that it doesn't go far enough. It wouldn't necessarily guarantee that the problem would be solved, but it also doesn't address a whole range of other things. Do you think that, A, that the tech companies' concerns are unfounded, and B, is there anything else that the House is planning to do on the NSA issue this year?
Well, let me deal with the second one first. I do believe this will address the issues that need to be addressed at the NSA for this year. Secondly, I don't know specifically what the concerns of some tech companies are, but their views were clearly represented in the discussion that came to this agreement. Thanks.